I'd like to cut a year's.
Good evening. Welcome to the Township Board of Trustees Committee of the Whole meeting for April 10th. Mr. Thomas, will you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, and I'll ask for an approval of the agenda to start with.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Support.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we will move to public comment. And we'll start here on the left side of my room, of our room. Good evening, Mr. Ert.
Good evening, Ed Ert, 7212 Porter Road. I just have one comment. I see on your agenda for Thursday, there's $12,000 being approved for chloride treatment of the roads. Another thing we're not supposed to be taking care of. I do notice it says basically the township's going to pay for all the chloriding of the road, these roads, except for the one in the fall by Genesee County. I thought it used to be the other way around. We paid for one and they paid for two. It seems like, it just, from memory, over the many years, I don't think we paid for most of them. I think the county paid for most of them, and we subsidized them instead of us. We should be subsidizing them, not them subsidizing us. They should be doing the bulk of it. Thank you.
I think the way it works out, actually, if I'm not mistaken, is that we basically are covering half the cost, and they cover half the cost if we decide to do 3 applications, which we are going to do 3 applications this time. So, but we'll cover that here on the agenda. Any other comments? Okay.
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes.
through you to Mr. Laddie. Mr. Laddie, is it appropriate for a board member to make a public comment during this section?
It's unusual, but I don't think it's completely out of order.
I'd like to do that, please.
Please.
I want to take a moment to make some comments about the township board, this staff here at Grand Blanc. I want to just basically from Clark Kent's perspective. In my 6 terms in committees dating back to 1984, I've had the opportunity to work with 5 different township supervisors and 6 different boards. Some good ones, some bad ones. So I think I have the experience to make a fair assessment. Folks, right now, this is a really good board with a lot of diversity and experience and a really good supervisor. Supervisor Bennett is a good leader. He treats his board members with dignity and respect. He truly cares about this community and the employees of this township. In my experience, he's at the top of all I have worked with. About a year ago, I made a statement that Grand Blanc Township department heads were an all-star cast. I made that comment based on my experience at Grand Blanc. During my tenure, some great departments have come and gone, but never has Grand Blanc Township assembled an entire group of all-stars at the same time. My assessment begins at the top with Township Superintendent Limata. I believe his leadership skills have brought out the best of all employees here at Grand Blanc. When the time comes for his yearly performance assessment, all other assessments aside, leadership should be the #1 measure. Other items to consider since Mr. Limata joined our team: we have reduced OPEB liabilities, retirement obligation liabilities, developed a long-term vision for reduction in health care liabilities, and improved employee management relationships. Mr. Laddie, your legal guidance and sometimes role as mediator, some members here know what I'm talking about, have aided these boards in correct decision making. Litigation during your tenure is nearly nil, has been. Your guidance and assistance regarding police matters and planning commission and board of zoning appeals decisions and deliberations speak to the latter. I place you at the top of my list as someone to be trusted and comfortable with your counsel. Our police department is ranked as one of the top in Michigan, not only by my assessment, by professional assessments as well. Since 2002, crime against persons have reduced 14%, and crimes against properties reduced 40%. Chief, in your own words, your goal to keep Grand Blanc Township a safe and preferred place to work, live, and visit is a success. So with all that said, it's with a heavy heart that I'm making the following difficult decision. On April 30th, I will be resigning my role as Grand Blanc Township trustee. I thank everyone that I've had the opportunity to work with at Grand Blanc during my 34 years. They say if you're an open-minded person, you can use experiences, good or bad, as educational and developmental. I believe I've always approached this position as an open-minded person. Therefore, this entire ride has been an education and helped me develop as a professional and an individual. I have all you to thank here at Grand Blanc, and I will miss you dearly. Thanks.
I make a motion we don't accept his resignation.
Well, it is with a heavy heart on our behalf as well, Mr. Kent, that, you've been a team player from day one, since I joined this board as a trustee, and really been a mentor to a lot of us.
Thank you.
It's not a happy moment to hear that you'll be leaving us, because you've contributed a lot and over the years, but breadth of knowledge and your history, Blanc has served us well, and so heavy heart that we accept it, but we know that you have life, and we know that family is a priority.
Thank you. Leaving this board has been the hardest decision in my life.
Thank you. Ms. Lane, and then Mr. Massey.
I had just remarried, and my last name was Lane, and Clark and I put our signs together, and I think we lost more political signs when we had Clark Kent and Kathy Lane on signs in that year. I am flabbergasted, surprised, shocked, but all I can do is wish you well.
Thank you.
Mr. Massey?
I don't think I could say in words what Trustee Clark Kent echoed here in this board meeting. I mean, I could come up with a lot of different words, but I could not phrase it as well as he has stated his 34 years serving with the township. So I think we owe to Mr. Trustee Clark Kent that his words be put into the minutes as spoken, and we need a record of those words that you spoke here to the board, because I think it's very important moving forward that we have those exact words in writing as you spoke them on your retirement from the board, because I think we owe that to you. You have served diligently in Grand Blanc Township, so I think we owe you that respect, because those words cannot be printed or said any better than you have written those words. So I would like for those words as written be inserted into the minutes.
Massey. Mr. Lehman?
What Trustee Massey just said, according to state statute, we need to have your resignation in writing anyways, Mr. Kent. So if you've got it transcribed and you sign it, then we'll put it on as an agenda item on Thursday would be my suggestion for the board. You'd be able to accept his resignation on Thursday, and then we would accept that letter as your official written resignation. Also, just thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate your leadership on the board, and I know the staff really appreciates what you just had to say tonight.
Yeah, I've worked with Clark for over 10 years, and so it's been a pleasure, and I know he's got his reasons, so we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Wow. So we continue with the board meeting?
Now let's call it a night.
I'm ready to. Okay. That'll add a couple of agenda items for Thursday's meeting, I think.
Yes, it will.
Okay. Moving on to board presentation.
You don't have one this evening.
Okay. And we're going to review the board agenda for Thursday, April 12th. In the consent agenda, we'll have the treasurer's report. Anything in there, Earl, that you'd like to mention, or?
No?
Okay. Well, also, item B, under consent.
Excuse me?
Yes.
On,
Yes, Mr.
on,
Mansour.
on item A, on the treasurer's report,
Yes.
page 130 of the package, there was an interstate billing for $125,000.
125,000, what's the check number?
It was on, it's on page 130. I guess I should start, I knew. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
How much was it? Okay.
125, 440, 87.
Yeah.
Okay, next item under consent agenda would be the, we're going to be declaring the police department unit Chevy Tahoe, basically, and the K-9 insert separately as surplus properties and authorize to be sold on gov.deals. Any questions on that? Item C, the board will consider a motion to approve superintendent's recommendation to grant Chief Ron Wiles request to hire a new patrol officer upon the successful completion of the background investigation. And the position's been budgeted for and previously approved by the board in the 2018 budget. Moving forward
Supervisor,
with some background checks and what have you.
excuse me, Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
Question on that, not on this one in particular, but
Yes.
we've talked about before establishing or writing
Yes.
a hiring policy.
Right.
I think about a month ago, we said we were going to have that in a month, and I'm just wondering if that's in progress or just how it's coming.
I'd be happy to answer that question.
And for the public's knowledge, what we're talking about is our policy in terms of, I would guess, police. I'll let you explain it.
So, because some questions that came up before, and Attorney Laddie has put together a draft, he's forwarded it to me, I'm going through it, we're gonna have it vetted by Labor Council as well before we bring it back to the board for adoption. Yeah, we have a policy, but it isn't prepared to be before the board quite yet, Trustee Mansour.
Thank you.
But in the meantime, we thought that the wording for this motion would be appropriate in that the individual or individuals that are going through the background check and what have you, we don't want to have their name out in the public, and so we thought we'd handle it this way, and I think it's acceptable. Item D, the board will consider a motion to approve the 2018 gravel road chloride plan for a cost of $12,000 and authorize the township supervisor and clerk to execute all related documents. And actually, last year we did 2 treatments, and we found that we had quite a few complaints, and the product that they put down didn't do the job. So we budgeted for 3 applications this year. And basically what it comes out to is we end up paying half the cost. And that's the way that it works with all the municipalities in our county with the road commission. So it'd be nice if they covered the entire cost, but that isn't going to happen. Item E, the board will consider a motion to waive the competitive bidding requirement due to the use of bulk bid pricing through Oakland County and approved purchase of a 2018 Chevrolet Equinox for $20,606 from Berger Chevrolet of Grand Rapids, and authorize the township superintendent to execute all related purchase orders and contracts. This is a planned and budgeted for assessing department pool car to be funded from the 2018 approved capital projects fund. So it was budgeted, and it will be used for assessing. Yes, Mr. Mansour?
Supervisor Bennett, the
Yes.
question I have on this one, and I'll probably bring it up again later, but we're participating in this bulk bid pricing through Oakland County, but are there any dealerships in the township that participate in that bid that we could patronize?
I've actually had a conversation with the owner of one of our dealerships and brought this up to him, and he said that actually he appreciates the thought that we would want to use him if possible, but he said that he's not involved in this bid process, but he appreciates us our concern, but he can't touch it.
Just want to support the people in our,
Mr. Kuzma?
Yeah, and I've talked to 2 dealers also over the years, and they said they can't touch it, they don't want anything to do with it, so.
There's one on Hill Road that I
Yes.
spoke with also, and they said that it's just not worth their time and effort.
So, and I guess the price is right. Ms. Lane?
I would agree with everything that's being said, but so the board knows, there are other opportunities that we've used for cars, and we go ahead and we utilize local businesses as much as possible in those areas, but for some reason, this bidder can make this so low.
Okay, moving on to operational issues, the board will consider a motion to accept the recommendation of the Election Commission to pay election inspectors $175 and co-chairs or chairpersons $200 per day for each election. We had some conversation on this a month or so ago. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, I have absolutely no question about the increase for the poll workers. I think the poll workers are overdue for an increase, and I think they work diligently at what they do, and I think they are sincere at what they do. But I have one question, and I would like for the clerk to answer this question for me. When we return on Thursday, where does this money come from? Which part of the budget does it come from?
If you were to look at the 2018 budget that you got, there is the clerk's department, which is our day-to-day operations, and then there is a separate budget for elections. And it deals strictly with my estimate, like all the department heads, what is going to happen this year and what I thought my costs would be. And I anticipated putting in some extra money there, hoping that it would be available to be used.
Ms.
So, Ms. Lane, is the increase in the budget, or?
It is, but again, there's some things, it's like everybody, there have been some expenses with the new equipment to make it more usable, so things like that. So I put it in there and we're crunching, but that's where you would find it if you were looking.
No, that's not my question, Madam Clerk. I didn't ask that. Let me clear up my question if I
Okay.
didn't make it clear. And the supervisor really asked the question to a degree what I wanted an answer on. Do you have the money in the budget for this increase? If we vote for an increase, do you have the money in the budget?
I believe I do.
Well, let me echo something. It's your budget, right?
Right?
Okay, so nobody else knows as much about your budget as you do,
Correct.
okay? So it's either yes or no, do you have the money? Because here's my concern. If we approve this and you don't have the money, what happens?
What happens with every department? When things come up, I am working to watch every penny in my budget. But like every other department head, there are times when unexpected things happen, and then you have to look for some money. But between the clerk's budget, if I've got money left over there, I would transfer it to elections. I was not anticipating a May election. And all of the costs for the May election will not necessarily be anticipated or covered, so. That's an unexpected thing that nobody could have planned for.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to look at budget, and, I don't know, Thursday you can cover that, Ms. Lane, if you want, in terms
Well,
of,
I'm watching it, and
Okay.
I'm making this proposal with every confidence that I can watch the money.
okay?
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
To Mr. Lehman,
Sure.
isn't the May 5th election a pass-through, though? We're getting paid for that election, and then we'll just make a budget amendment? Is that school only?
School only,
We'll get paid for that, correct?
not all of it, but there are costs that we have to pay for the county now. For example, they are now programming ballots, so for every election, we have a $300 cost there. When we got the new equipment that you see up there, to make it work for the DPW and for our election workers, there's additional money I put in there. I'm watching the budgets just like every department head here, and making the best estimates at the beginning of the year and watching it during the year.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's questioning that the money is not being spent well. I think we just want to I think Mr. Massey's just asking if we've budgeted appropriately for the increase, and then especially with having a May election, if we need to plan ahead and figure out where we're going to get the money. I don't know, maybe Mr. Lehman has a better idea on finances in terms of crunching the numbers and whether or not we're going to be severely over budget or just a little bit or what have you. But I know, we charge Mr. Lehman with making sure our numbers at the end of the year come out. And I know, I don't know, maybe you should sit down with Mr.
If you recall the budget process, as we get started every year, especially coming into a election year like this, where Clerk Lane, like every other department head, has to create a request for their budget, and they have to anticipate what could be the worst case scenario. It's difficult from an election standpoint because we might have 2, we might have 3 elections, and we don't know going into it. So it's based upon, it is a best guess system on an election because this one cropped up and it came. Well, it's true the schools will have to reimburse ballots and things like that. We had to ramp up training, bring people in sooner, so I think Clerk Lane has had to respond quickly to be prepared to move forward with the May budget, especially with all new equipment in. We won't get reimbursed on all those costs, but it depends how fast workers get out too, and that's one of the things that Clerk Lane just has to watch as she goes through the elections. If we have to do a budget amendment, we'll have to do a budget amendment later in the year when, maybe by the time we get through the August primary election, we'll have a pretty good idea of where we're at for the year before we go into November, and we'd ask the board to make an adjustment at that time, a budget amendment, before we get into the November's election.
So maybe when we look at the budget, we should, I don't know how often we look at raises for the election workers, but it probably should be an item
There
that we,
hasn't been one for years.
okay. But it might be something we look at when we're setting the budget, so we can be prepared in advance.
Well, that's
for
why
that.
I did put in extra money, but
Okay.
again, you'd also know that in my own department, the deputy has been gone for a while.
Right.
So there may be some extra money there.
Okay.
There are some part-timers working now in order to keep this election running on track, and some of that is not reimbursable when it's a regular day-to-day operation, even for elections. So,
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr.
I have a
Massey.
question to the clerk. I hear you very clearly. I understand what you're saying, but at the next meeting, can you give us some numbers? Now, since you know the number of elections gonna take place, and you know what the requirements are, so you have that at your fingertip. So at the next meeting, could you tell us whether there's gonna be a shortfall or not?
I can do my best.
We'll do some projections then.
Yeah, I think,
Mr.
yeah, I
Cusack?
think there will be some projections, because sometimes they go over, I've seen elections where they didn't get out of there till 3 o'clock. And I'm sure she's not budgeting for 3 o'clock, she's probably budgeting for 12 or 1. So there's a lot of exceptions. She can, it's a best guess estimate, I think.
Is it a flat rate
I think
payment
Mr.
that we're
Littleton
looking at
has a
for these
point.
individuals,
Yes.
or hourly?
No,
So
this,
if they work till 3
the
in the
hourly
morning,
rate
right?
that you approved for $10 was something new. It used to be $10 for a day when they came in for training. and the previous prices were $25 per day cheaper. And in my own going and talking to some of the other clerks, the rates for hourly training is something they've implemented for years. And so, and these prices I'm giving you for townships of our size are right on target. Some of them are paying $12 an hour, $15 an hour for training, plus these rates. So these were things that I thought were, for all the good things that Trustee Massey is saying, were the reasons why I proposed to him and to Mr. Thomas that we bring this to you in January.
Okay. Mr.
I mean,
Lehman?
I would challenge any department head, if you ask them for a truthful answer, they'd say, I gave it my best case scenario, and now I'm gonna watch my budget so that I can get through the year, so.
Right, and I know, we asked Mr. Lehman the same thing when he's proposing raises or wage increases, do we have it in our budget? So it's a question that's frequently asked. Mr. Lehman?
So if you look at, in the packet, Clerk Lane included the minutes from the election commission, and you'll note that she put decent notes in there about the election inspectors. 3 of them must be present at all time. We assigned 5 to 6 inspectors to each precinct to provide possibility. So there's going to be 5 or 6. We're raising it $25 a day per person. So it's somewhere between $125 to $150 a day per precinct. How many precincts do you have, Kathy? 18 or?
We have 15 and 2 AV counting boards
So if you're
on a long-term, on the primary and the general election.
So if you're looking for the impact that it would have, 15 precincts and 2 absentee voter counting boards between potentially $125 to $150 a day. And then there's going to be 3 elections this year, so that kind of, although the May election, you're not going to have every precinct up, I don't believe.
No, we're consolidating again to save money.
So at least it gives the board some idea of what kind of money we're talking about, that each precinct, somewhere 125 to 150, then depending on, August and November's elections will be full precincts. But that should give you some background, and then Kathy can certainly provide you from the budget what she has budgeted for 2018 for the elections for election workers' pay. Maybe that would help provide some.
Sure, so you can do that for Thursday and,
Sure.
okay. Anything else with that? Okay, thank you. Item B, the board will consider a resolution to upgrade mercury vapor streetlights with high-pressure sodium fixtures in the addressed area to complete the second phase of the project with the consumer's energy at no cost to the township. Questions or concerns? Okay. Yeah, Mr. Guzzo?
The only question I had is, I know we can't convert to the
LED?
LED, right? Right. So they can't change the fixtures or anything? But once they have a replacement, will they go from the sodium to the LEDs or not?
For a price tag, I'm sure they will.
Why
So at
can't-
least we are saving money now, right? I mean, this is gonna save us money, and it doesn't cost us anything.
Come on up,
right?
Mr. Sears.
They charge us like a ton of money.
Why isn't it available right now, the LED?
They don't have a fixture engineered for our decorative street poles, or not so much decorative, they're more attractive than a wood pole, but for our residential street lights, they don't have an LED fixture engineered for that yet.
Okay.
And they also don't have an LED fixture engineered for the lights that are suspended over the road by wire either. It's just the ones that are on a steel arm that come over the road. So consumers did say that we could work with an engineer and have that designed, but we would have to bear all the cost.
Okay.
My recommendation would be to wait until other communities demand it, and then consumers will just do it, and we can take advantage of it then, depending on price.
Ms. Lane?
Last year, we had Consumer Energy come in and gave us a reduction in price for our major streets,
Right.
and those are going to LED lights.
Those are done.
And And we did pay, we got a significant savings there because it was something they wanted to do.
We'd like to have it done too, but
Well, and it's, remember, if you remember the conversation, the price from converting from mercury vapor to LED was significantly cheaper than converting from the high-pressure sodium to LED.
Right.
I can't explain why, but it has something to do with the energy efficiency. There actually isn't much of a difference at all between high-pressure sodium and LED lights.
So
High-pressure sodium are very energy efficient. Mercury vapors are the really bad ones, which they're wanting to replace now.
So by us going to high-pressure sodium, and it was more expensive for us to convert high-pressure sodium to LED
Correct,
than it was mercury.
correct.
Right.
Are we just making it more expensive for when we switch to LED?
I wouldn't say necessarily. I think it's
otherwise
gonna be
it's-
expensive no matter
The other way
what.
it is.
I think it's gonna be expensive no matter what. I think at this time, it's gonna be, we don't have to pay anything for these conversions right now.
Okay.
Right, but they did tell us it was gonna be more if it went from
Right,
sodium than what we're on now, right?
right. But I think regardless, I couldn't tell you what's gonna happen in the future. It may be 15 years from now, it might be 20 years from now. I couldn't
Right.
tell you for sure.
Okay.
So it's more to go, I'm sorry,
Yes, Mr. Thomas?
it's more to go from the sodium to
LED.
LED than, so we're just adding a step, but that step's actually gonna save us money with the mercury.
It will save us a little bit of money. What Consumers Energy does is whenever you convert to a more energy efficient light, there's actually a different bracket for the energy consumption, what you pay for it. So you do save a little bit of money, but you don't get a lot of that cost savings because you're actually paying more for the energy. We didn't actually save a whole lot in energy usage when we switched to LED because there's a higher rate bracket for LED lighting than there is for mercury vapor.
So you put in more energy.
Consumers is
efficient, the
gonna
rate goes
probably
higher.
do it no matter what.
Let me ask you a real dumb question then, why do we have to switch from the mercury to the sodium then?
Because they want, the consumers wants us to. For one thing, it does save energy. It is considering the environment and everything else.
But you said it's just minimal,
There is a cost savings, but it's minimal to us.
and that yet when we do switch to LED, it's gonna be more expensive to go from the,
The initial investment will be more expensive, but I don't know that. Please don't take my word for that, because I have no idea what's
Can
gonna
we
happen
check on
there.
that for Thursday, Jeff, to see if?
I can try.
Okay, I know you're
They're not,
tied up.
the LED fixtures are not available
They're-
right now, so there's no way
Correct.
for us to be able to answer that question because they're not available.
They're not available, they don't have them designed, they don't even have a fixture available for the streetlights in the neighborhoods that switch to LED. So they couldn't even give me a price on it right now,
Right.
because there
But-
isn't one available. If we wanted one,
but still.
But it was more expensive though, regardless of the fixture,
Right.
to go from the one to LED than the
it
other.
was, yes.
So won't it be in the future as well?
Yep.
It could be, I really don't know. Theoretically, it would be.
So then what's the purpose of us switching then?
It'll
Because
save you
it's-
energy right now.
A little bit.
Everyone's eliminating the mercury vapor lights. Consumers will most likely do this whether we approve it or we don't. Because they want to eliminate mercury vapor and move to high pressure sodium. They'd rather go to LED, but they charge us to make that conversion to LED. You guys will never have to change those to LED if you don't want to, so.
Correct.
You can leave them as high pressure sodium forever in the future. You'll never have to make that
And-
Well,
conversion.
why can't we leave it in mercury then?
And just remember,
I'm not trying to
even
be-
though it's a minimal cost savings, and I couldn't even give you, it might be hundreds of dollars a year, it might be in the low thousands of dollars a year that we're saving. That savings is passed on to our residents through special assessments, because our residents pay every penny of the energy lighting.
Okay,
So even though it's minimal,
I'm missing I guess I'm missing the leap of faith here with,
it's a hard thing to explain, Ken, because I don't understand it myself.
okay, can we then get better explanation of it before we do a vote on this, or, Mr. Chairperson?
Is there a time frame that this has to be signed by, or
I don't believe so.
so you do more
I'm
research on
not sure.
it?
I'm gonna, Consumers is gonna do it anyhow.
Really?
I believe that they will probably change them out regardless. This is just amending that contract. They're gonna
At
end
one
up changing.
time, at one time, about a year and a few months ago, we had another company come in and do, or we started working with them, and then all of a sudden that kind of fell off. Was somebody that you were working with in West Bloomfield or Detroit or Ann Arbor?
No, but it was a lighting company, and they were just talking about what our options were. But they didn't fall off, it just, we looked at what the options were.
And it wasn't viable for the township, because what that company did was they helped you absorb the maintenance of the lights, rather than having Consumers Energy do the maintenance of the lights.
For example, the city of Ann Arbor took over
Right.
their lighting. And if we wanted to buy a couple of lift trucks and
hire employees
hire a couple of employees,
It doesn't-
the city of Ann Arbor ended
Right.
up saving about $900,000 the first year that they did it.
But they
And it might
probably-
be something long-term we look at, especially, you know, as we grow, maybe down the road, it is something that we take over. But we end up having to pay them for the lights to begin with, for the existing poles and everything else, from what my understanding, what I recall.
That's right.
So there is some investment, I mean, they don't give them to you. And then you also have to buy lift trucks and have staff that are trained in doing that. But, you know, like I say, the city of Ann Arbor, I believe the figure was like 900,000 they saved the first year, even after the investment.
Right.
Mr. Mansour?
Yeah, so, Director, I have 3 questions I'd like, and maybe we can kind of pull these together by the Thursday, so we can put them in there. Well, first of all, where have the upgrades been completed at so far? Just to help me kind of
Where
drive
they
by.
are scattered throughout the township. There are some in subdivisions, there's some on main roads.
Do you have an example off the top of your
I
head?
have maps that I could email you.
All right,
There
would
are
you-
some in Wishingwell, right across the street. There's actually quite a few over there. There are a few in Hillcrest, right across the street.
And now you can see the difference.
You can see the difference, absolutely. And that is a benefit with the LEDs, is they are brighter.
Okay.
And they provide more
High-
safety.
high
It's
pressure.
also a benefit with the high-pressure sodiums. They are brighter also than what the mercury vapors are.
In the proposal that's before us that we're considering here, there are 24.
Correct.
But do you have a time frame, or can we figure out, like, how long it would take to get those?
You know, I could ask them.
Ask the question.
I'm sure it'll be a couple months.
And then the third item here was, and it kind of goes back to the comments here, you know, are we capturing the energy savings so that we can report those in terms of if it's not maybe dollars so much, maybe it's
Sure.
kilowatt hours, so we can kind of keep track of that and you know, build toward our sustainability.
Sure.
and the rest
I
of
can
that.
see if I can get some kind of rate on that. I don't know if I'll be able to get the energy savings by Thursday night.
No,
but I'll
okay, but
do
just,
the
we
best I
want to
can.
kind of keep that on our list of
Sure.
positives. Thank you.
Right.
And Mr. Sears is attending a workshop this
Right.
week too, so he's tied up with that. He came back to come to the meeting tonight,
Sure.
so might not, and if there's no time frame, we could always wait till later this month. to
You
make a
could,
decision.
absolutely. You could
Yeah,
push,
'cause we don't
you
wanna
could
put him
push
in a
it.
box,
Yeah.
because he's at a conference, and I don't know if you're gonna be able to get all this done.
I could work on it, but I could try, for sure.
Yeah, but otherwise, we'll
Um,
look at maybe moving it till later in the month if it's not critical that we have a decision. I mean, it sounds like it's gonna happen anyways, but just to satisfy our
Absolutely. We can get that
concerns.
information for you.
Okay.
But they
Miss-
are brighter, right? So it's safe.
They're
no
brighter,
matter
they're
what.
more energy efficient, like I said. The
Right.
maintenance is lower on them. You don't have them go in and out. You know, you go through some of the subdivisions, you see the lights that, you know, turn on and turn back off. The high-pressure sodiums don't do that as often as the mercury vapors do, so there is less maintenance. But yeah, it's just the question of the energy efficiency and the cost savings, how we can pass that on to the residents. And we can do the best we can to get those answers.
Ms. Lane?
I want to clarify for this board, if you start driving through Hillcrest or Wishingwell, we're not talking about the 14-foot aluminum pole or the 20-foot aluminum pole with the underground wiring. We're talking about regular telephone poles. So if you're looking in there and as far as Concord Green and your own subdivisions where you have the 14 or 20-foot pole, those lights, they don't have one yet that they can convert. And if you were going to convert those would be mighty expensive for the individual subdivisions.
Okay, I think we covered that one
Thank
pretty
you.
thoroughly. Thank you, Mr. Sears. Item C, the board will consider a motion to approve recommendation of Parks and Recreation Director Kay Edson to accept the Rowe Engineering proposal to provide design and construction administration services for the capital projects of the South Pavilion concrete floor and sidewalk replacement and construction of the new multi-purpose athletic fields in the amount of $17,950, and authorize the superintendent to execute the agreements. This proposal will be paid from the Parks and Recreation Capital Improvement Millage. Good evening, Ms. Edson.
Good evening. Before I get started, Clark, I would just like to extend my sincere appreciation for all your years of service and your fairness and open-mindedness to the township business and to the staff, and certainly for your service on the Parks and Rec Commission. Very sorry to see you go, but wish you all the best.
Thank you.
So, to continue with our second year plan of the millage, two of the big items that we want to attack are starting the construction of the two multi-purpose fields on the north side of the park, and also removing and replacing the floor in the original South Pavilion. We have talked with Scott from Rowe, and he's been out to the park and has done some initial design work for us, and so we're asking for your permission to go out for bid on those two projects.
Ms. Hudson, on the pavilion, I've been out there numerous times, but the pavilion obviously doesn't get anything but foot traffic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'd wonder how in the world did, it's concrete, was it just the heaving of the concrete that's caused the issues?
Well, it was poured as all one slab, and you know how big that slab is.
Oh, okay.
And so there are numerous cracks, numerous holes, and, they're just expanding every year.
So instead of pouring it in
sections.
squares or sections where it could
It was 40 years
adjust,
ago.
to adjust it just as cracked from adjustment. Mr.
Yes.
Massey?
Yeah, I'm not expecting you to answer this, but it's a technical question. Have you noticed the floor, if all was poured as one solid block, was the floor cut into squares? Like,
No,
okay, it wasn't?
it is one
Oh,
solid sheet,
that was 2 years ago?
40. 40. This is the original pavilion.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I'm surprised it lasted that long.
Right.
Trustee Massey,
It's covered. It's
Trustee Massey, I had our building inspector, Ted, go out there, Sapansky go out there, because I was looking at the pavilion myself.
Yes.
About, is it going to, is this just a Band-Aid on a bigger problem? And he told me that cement was like 24 inches thick.
wow.
Yeah. And he said he said that floor is incredibly well built. It's just, what we're talking about is some small chipping area and water.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, not small by any means, but the thing is just built like a tank.
So,
inches.
I don't know,
Parts of it.
has Mr. Hatemeyer looked at it yet, or?
He has.
That seems like if that's 24 inches thick,
On
that's
some
gonna,
Costs a
parts.
lot.
that's gonna cost a fortune
Good
to
evening,
remove
Scott
it.
Emery with Rowe. Yeah, we weren't aware, we didn't aware of a thickness.
Yeah,
What we'll
Ted
probably
was
do
doing
is get a
it for
couple
me.
cores just to confirm the thickness before we get working, because the last thing we want to do is hire a contractor, then find out that it's 24 inches thick when we get into it.
Yeah, that's,
That's what Ted was saying.
Yeah, but as Kay mentioned, it was all poured monolithic, and usually cut them into like 20 by 20 sections to force the concrete to crack where you want it. So it kind of cracked crazy and independently. There's no expansion joints in it anywhere, so it can't move. So
they must have
Yeah,
got
it's
free
40.
concrete.
yeah.
It must have been free concrete if they poured it
Yeah,
24
yeah.
inches
I'm
thick.
thinking that 24 inches thick is a slight exaggeration.
Well,
Yeah.
I have a question.
that's what Ted was
I have
Mr.
a
Massey,
question
Mr.
for-
Massey?
To the engineer. Do you think they put
making. his
a lot of wire in there?
solid.
A lot of wire.
Wire?
Re-rod or whatever?
Yeah, the
Re-rod.
wire with the rods.
It's hard to tell until you get into it.
Oh, okay. I thought you could see
Almost
the
impossible.
rods with the wire running out of the side.
No, sometimes it'll flake off, and you can see if there's any reinforcement in it, but
Yes.
it hasn't gotten to that point yet.
Yes.
so it's-
No.
Wow.
Boy.
But we're not talking about replacing the floor, we're just talking about fixing it.
No.
Replace it.
Replace it.
So that's a lot, that's gonna cost a lot to dig that up then, if it's 24 inches.
Well, talk to-
70,000 to dig up, 70,000?
Yeah,
to
we'll
place.
do that, and like I said, we'll get some cores too to verify that before we get into it.
Now, based on my engineering experience, I'm not doubting what trustee Ken Thomas said. It's just hard for me to believe that it's 24 inches thick. I've never.
Again, he could have been making a point that the thing is a solid building,
Oh, okay.
but that's what he told me.
24 inches is, based on my experience, it's just.
We'll let you guys know.
Gross current estimate to remove the concrete and replace it is about $35,000 with contingency fees built in. So that was the estimate.
All right. Okay. It'll be interesting to see the results of the study. Okay. Mr. Lemata?
As part of the same, the $17,950 for the project isn't just the concrete, though, it's also accounts for engineering services on the field reconstruction as well.
Correct.
So what
just
will
so
that
the others-
involve as far as the engineering for that? What types of things do you look at while you're looking at that? I'm just curious what.
Oh, no problem. Well, this is gonna be what we call a log job, so we're not gonna do any survey work because the field has already been mass graded, and it's really close to the grade it needs to be at. So we can save some costs by not having the survey come out. So we're gonna do a real basic bid package, specifications, schematic drawings, and really they're just gonna freshen up the grade. It'll have a 2% slope going across the hill. They'll put sand down, level it off, put 3 inches of topsoil and seed. And then we're also gonna put in a new irrigation pump in and irrigation system.
Okay.
And all that stuff can be done without survey work. And
How is the drainage on those fields now? I mean, when it rains, do they dry out relatively quickly, or does it take days?
The
or-
existing soccer fields are.
Right,
It's interesting because I've walked in the last couple of days because they're
right.
anxious to get out and play on them. You can almost draw a line down the middle. The east side is pretty dry and the west side is still very damp. So I don't know if the sun is not hitting it as fast, but and 2 of the fields are fields 1 and 2 are a little bit higher than 3 and 4, so their water is also draining off. So field 3 is the wettest. But for as much snow, they were ready to play yesterday until we had the 2 blizzards in the afternoon.
So they are gonna change that then, right, Kay? Because the fields that are wet, the one side, they're gonna try to work with that so that in the future it won't be that wet, right?
Well, we're not doing any work on those fields. This is a brand new field. This is on the other side of the road,
Oh, okay.
next to the pavilion.
Okay, yeah, construction of new multi-purpose athletic
Yes.
fields. Okay. Okay,
And they're gonna be soccer fields.
They're gonna be multi-purpose, so we can do soccer, lacrosse, football, rugby if there's an interest.
Whatever comes up,
Yep.
right?
very good. Okay, next item is also with regard to Parks and Rec, and that's, the board will consider a motion to approve the Parks and Recreation Director's request for the following capital improvements as presented in the 2018 Capital Projects Plan, and authorize superintendent to execute all the agreements. Phase 2 for our security cameras, and purchase 4x2 UTV for $8,301. Purchase 60-inch mower, softball fields, backstop and fencing, phase 1, and then replace soccer fields, top dressing and seating.
I would
Okay.
like to point out that the mower is actually a 72-inch deck mower, not a 60-inch. That was my mistake by submitting that.
One question I had, I didn't see it in there, the 13,000, there wasn't a bid in there or anything, did I just
For the
miss it?
security cameras?
Yeah.
Yes, no, I submitted that. I submitted the whole bid from last year, and it's,
Because I went through it, I didn't print it, but, so it's in there then,
yes,
right?
it's listed as 2 phases. So the first phase, I think, was 34,000, and the second phase is 13.
Okay, and so that's a new current bid, the 13,000 is a new current bid?
Well, it's the existing bid from last year, which he is.
They're gonna honor that?
Yes,
then,
mhm.
Okay. Sorry I missed that, because I
Yeah.
didn't see it, I'll go back,
It's-
I'll have to print it. And then the other question I had was, on the softball fields, I know the quote for Michigan Fence showed about 16,700, but here we've got 28,000, and I don't know what the difference would be.
Can I look?
Yeah. See, because here's the quote that says that.
It's per field, and there's 4 fields.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Ms. Hudson, one of the things I know we talked about with the previous work on the cameras was, I think we said that they were accessible or something remotely with, through the internet or what have you?
We can access them at our office,
Right,
on my
by-
computer and our assistant's computer.
Okay, all right. So who accesses them currently? Does our police department access that at all?
No,
or-
we didn't pay for that service.
Okay, but if you can access them through a computer, then pretty much, what is it, a password type setup?
Well, I believe that, I'd have to double check on that with the installer. He came in and put some software on our computers so that we
Okay.
can access them, and then our maintenance staff can access them at the park.
All right.
I can check with him about that.
I'm just thinking in terms of if we look at, expanding our camera system or whatever our capability to monitor, our properties, if that's possible.
I thought
to-
what he had said was that the capability to do that was a lot more money.
That's what it was last year.
Well, I think what it was
didn't
is
hear
that
that.
through the internet,
Yeah,
it was
'cause I thought-
available, but if we wanted to wire it, it was going to be
Right.
Okay.
expensive.
Right.
Exactly
All right.
right.
Yeah, because I thought you
You're right.
said it would be beneficial for us not to hardwire it, but to actually go through the internet, and then we could actually forward it right to the police without having any wires.
Correct, and we are working on improving the internet service out there. I've contacted Mr. Laddie, who's going to, as soon as we get the correct verbiage to him, going to contact the cell tower company, because we have a lot better access if we can put it on top of the cell tower than, right now it's on top of our maintenance building.
All right, Mr. Mansur?
So, Ms. Hudson, so the security cameras are basically the same, more of the same,
Yes, it's just extending the coverage.
okay? Is the purchase of the 4x2, I mean, I saw it referred to as an RTV in there, but can you?
It's a UTV.
UTV. Can you kind of describe what the use and kind of, who keeps the keys and, kind of all that?
Well, our maintenance
Is it a
supervisor,
it is a replacement, right?
well, we're going to keep the one that we have.
Okay.
And have this in addition. It's a lot easier for our guys to move through the park and collect trash from the north end of the park to the south end of the park, at the soccer fields, the dog park, the baseball fields, the softball fields, along the path, splash pad, all the different places they have to collect trash. We've got 4 fields on one side and 6 fields on the other, so they're constantly going back and forth with chalk and equipment and that kind of stuff to line the fields. So it's just to make us more efficient.
Does it have a trailer on it or not?
No,
Just a-
no,
So you
Just
think it'll
open.
be big enough to handle what you want?
Yes.
Just the way it is?
yes,
Because it's harder for a truck to go back there. Plus, if it's wet, it's gonna tear it all up, right? So
Exactly.
This is gonna be wider tires and it's not gonna disturb the ground as much, right?
right.
So, yeah, so the other question I have on here, I saw that there were, I think I saw 3 quotes for this unit in there. One of them, again, was, from a establishment in the township, Weingart's. And, is this just a low bid wins thing, or, how does that work?
Well, for the UTV, we only had 2 bids.
Okay.
We went through the Mitten
Okay.
site that the township has set up. We only had 2 bids because we were very interested in getting a Kubota.
Okay,
The low bid is from New Holland, which is in Burton, which we've done a lot of business with. I thought Weingart's was out of Clarkston.
Mark, yeah, it was south of us.
it seems like it had a Grand Blanc address, at least in one of the ones that I noticed.
I don't think we had,
I don't
yeah,
think
New
so.
Holland was the only real local
Right.
business that bid on anything. And I think we had 9 bids on the mower.
Okay.
And we narrowed it down to, we took throughout the very cheapest and the most expensive and got down to the main areas that we were looking for, which was the deck, a gasoline engine, a suspension seat, and a commercial grade mower.
Okay, I'm just, trying to,
Oh, I
make sure we
certainly
have
understand.
have as much local as we can. Thank you.
Director.
Yep.
Question
Mr. Massey?
to the director. Your tennis courts are in excellent condition.
The what?
Your tennis courts?
We don't have-
Tennis.
We don't have any tennis courts.
What is the field that next to the one of the provision that you were?
That we just
We've
redone?
got, we've got basketball courts and we've got, an inline
Is that
skating.
volleyball?
We've got pickleball
Oh, okay, okay.
that's on concrete. And then
Yes.
we have sand volleyball courts that are to the east of those.
So they are in fair condition?
Yes.
Okay.
So, just going back to the fields, do we, do outside groups come in and use those, Kay, or how does that, I mean, because we can't have a lacrosse, program and all, I mean, do we?
We have a large lacrosse program.
Okay,
We've
Fabulous.
got 2 girls teams
Okay.
and 3 boys teams that
All
are, they're extremely popular. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
the middle schools don't have a team, so it's kind of quote-unquote the feeder
Mm-hmm.
system for the high school.
okay,
It's very popular.
all right,
And as you know, we do rent out our fields for some tournaments
okay, good,
to enhance our budget, and it also brings a lot of money, revenue into the community and into the
Right.
county as a whole.
yeah.
So,
This probably isn't the place, but I think one of the things, I mean, we've got an asset with the parks and with our schools, and, you know, there are areas that form consortiums or commissions that try to attract, and I know we already have a number of tournaments here, but try to attract, for example, the high school finals for various sports, and the hotels get involved, the chamber gets involved, what have you, and, you know, you become the place for whatever, you know, high school finals we're looking at.
I don't think our facilities are quite to that level
Okay.
yet. It'd be great if we got them there.
Right,
I'm all for
right.
that.
That would be good to get to that point, is my thought, but.
Their
Mr.
softball
Bozak?
fields are though.
Our softball fields are good, but those are mainly slow pitch fields. Those aren't fast pitch fields. So there's a difference. I mean, when you're looking at the high schools wanting to bring the state tournament in,
Right. Mr. Guzak?
And you said the 4 new fields are all multiple use, right?
there'll be 2.
2?
Yes, those will be multi-purpose.
So what were the other 4? There was
Soccer?
wasn't
There's,
there
talking
4
about.
fields?
there's 4
Oh,
softball
there was
fields that we're
4
putting
softball
backstops
fields.
on.
Okay, but with the extra 2, that gives you more capabilities for when you have soccer games. You've got 2 more fields to use
Exactly.
within the park, right?
Yes, and there's a huge demand, especially, there's our Grand Blanc youth football program. Originally, when they were originally formed, they were practicing at the old GM plant, the old tank plant.
Right,
And then when GM put that up for sale, they got booted from there, so they've been looking for a place. So they're actually right now practicing on our softball outfields until
Okay.
we can get a
Right.
multi-purpose field for them to practice on.
okay.
So that's great, because you can use it for, you know, soccer or
Yep.
lacrosse or possibly.
It'll be a nice complement because football will play in the fall and lacrosse will play in the spring.
Right.
So would this be completed in time for them to use it all this summer, or?
No.
September.
No. I would hope, I'd actually like to keep them off one more year,
Oh,
just
yeah, 'cause you
to
don't
let
wanna tear
it
it
take
up.
hold. We kind of let
Right.
people on the soccer fields a little earlier than we probably should have, which is,
All right. Ms. Lane?
Okay, for the board and for refreshing me, how many people do you think utilizes Bicentennial Park in totality during a year?
well, the figures that we used when we went from the millage 2 years ago that we can track were in excess of 175,000.
Wow.
But there's lots of people, especially come out and use the walking trail. There's lots of people who just come out and have lunch. There's lots of people who just come out and play catch or,
Right.
hit balls with their kids and stuff that
Right.
we don't have a way of tracking. Or even use the dog park, really.
One thing just to throw out there is, have we ever considered putting a sign on I-75 that tells people that, hey, this is Bicentennial Park? I know, when I drive by there, I see the small baseball, the pavilion for that. But
There's no
Might-
sign, you're right.
might be something to consider, that, to let people know that it's Grand Blanc Township, Bicentennial Park. But anyways.
Definitely.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Hudson? Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Hey, resident question on the millage for the parks, Mr. Laddie. That millage was set up for capital improvements, Or was it?
It was, as I recall, it was set up for equipment and operation of equipment in township parks. So I can't remember the exact language of it, but it was, the primary purpose for it was to be able to make some capital improvements and then service those capital improvements.
Okay.
Do you want me to read the ordinance?
What, the millage language?
Yes, he asked me for it earlier this week, so.
Shall the blah, 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 down to the meat and potatoes, section 6 of the Michigan Constitution, and levy it to a 10-year, 2016 to 2025, inclusive for the purchase, maintenance, and operation of recreational facilities within Grand Blanc Township.
You couldn't have been closer.
To me.
Facilities is even more broad than
Right,
than
exactly.
capital equipment,
Okay.
but get the
All
idea.
right. Thank you, Mr. Lady. Mr. Thomas. The item E, the board will consider a motion to approve amending the littering ordinance to include violations involving the unwanted delivery of advertising circulars or similar papers being left in the driveways of township residents. Yes.
This is a first reading of the ordinance, so if the board approves it on Thursday, it'll be published as a pending ordinance in the Grand Blanc View. After it's adopted, if it is adopted, it'll be published in its final verbiage. So if there's any verbiage
publish it?
changes,
Can we publish it in this paper too?
that's not one that's in general circulation, and I have never gotten one of those.
Come over to my
You got
neighborhood.
3, I didn't get any.
I believe that I have residents throwing them in my driveway. now,
Yes.
because, I had 3 of them in my driveway today, so.
Supervisor Bennett, I would
Yes.
like to check and see if the clerk actually resides in the township.
I do. Longer,
actually
I
get
think,
these.
than, the only person that I think that's lived here longer is Mr. Kent.
Okay. Yes,
On
Mr.
a, on a
Hansel.
more serious note here, so in the language, in section 6, I was expecting to see the verbiage unwanted in the listing of things that were considered, litter. Where does that, where does it actually talk about unwanted delivery of advertising circulars in
Well-
the verbiage?
If you look at section 1, you'll see that it describes any person who knowingly, without consent of a public authority or a private property owner, who shall dump, deposit, throw, and it leaves all of the act actually of littering. And so in my interpretation, section 1 would be the issue of consent, and then section 6 would be the definition of litter. And as I read that, and I figured that might come up, I have to admit, I do not know what the word off-foul means. It sounds bad, so I figure we'll leave it in there. But I'm gathering, again, it's sort of just a collection of paper, materials, just anything that you can think of.
So this wasn't created specifically for
No.
us, this was a kind of a cut and paste thing?
Exactly, and it grew out of, frankly, the same concerns that other communities were having with these circulars being deposited. And it was a collaborative effort put together by some of the communities on the west side of the county. And they have indicated that since they've adopted this language, that they've had success in preventing the unwanted depositing of the circulars.
Shall we take a look and see if we might want to clarify or make in more plain English the off-fall
Yeah, we'll
term?
find out. Now I'm curious, now we gotta know.
And the last question I have is, can we make this apply to my email account in any way?
I'm sorry?
Can we make this apply to my
Oh,
email?
no.
Company?
And-
No?
And by the way, Superintendent Lehman is
What was Al's comment?
not surprisingly knows the definition of
Might apply to his email.
offal, and it has to do with animal.
Well, it's what you leave behind when you end your game.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, behind.
Thank you.
Well, we do get people that call regarding
Yes.
deer that die on their property, and unfortunately, if they're not in the street, we don't pick them up, so I don't know.
This will allow us to ticket the deer.
Right. All right, Mr. Thomas?
Is this when we can ask questions about this?
What's that?
This wouldn't interfere with anyone's First Amendment rights or anything like that in a paper.
I don't think so. What we've done is we've tried to, I should say, the creators of the ordinance have tried to create a definition that isn't content specific. It's really just a matter of if you put a piece of material without permission on somebody's private or public property. And so, and I made note of this, there was an issue down in Oakland County where a newspaper company took exception with an ordinance that prevented that. And I think this is pretty well crafted to avoid that sort of situation. And again, I think that the success that they have seen in other communities means that it's a reasonable interpretation of an ordinance, and hopefully we won't have to use it. Hopefully we'll get compliance.
Supervisor Bennett, so just pursuing that just a little bit further, some of us have been known during election times to go out and to knock on doors and put flyers and things on people's doors and et cetera. Some of us have been known to do that. Would this, cause a concern there, or? I mean, I suppose it could possibly.
It technically is, it's an unpermitted placement of material on somebody's property, so technically that could be an issue.
Okay.
But again, I'm just reminding everybody, if you find better words than Attorney Laddie's, you can change it at the next reading without having to republish.
Okay. Well, we'll decide on Thursday whether we make some changes or move forward on that, I guess. Okay. Next item on the agenda. The board will consider a motion to change the meeting dates of April 24th to April 27th. And the reason for that is that the Michigan Township Association will be having their conference, and several of us will be attending that meeting. And so what we're looking at is holding a meeting to pay some bills, and probably the other item, unless we decide to do it on Thursday, is this Thursday would be to talk about our mosquito millage. We could take care of that either this Thursday or take care of that at our meeting on, if you agree to move it to 27th. And I understand that not everybody's going to be able to make probably the meeting on the 27th at 10 a.m., but hopefully we'd have enough for a quorum. And then also May 8th, we have an election that will be occurring, and this room will be used for that election. So we're looking at moving that to May 9th. Yes, Mr.
Have you
Massey.
finished?
Yes.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
I will be here. How
For
many
the 27th, you're saying?
Yeah, how many will not, because you mentioned the quorum?
Right. We just need to have 4 board members here, so.
I won't be here.
Okay. Mr. Guzak?
Yeah, I should be here.
I'll be here.
Okay, so we'll have 4. We'll have 5 probably.
Okay.
Okay. And then May 8th to moving that to May 9th. That work, everyone?
Yes.
All right. With regard to the mosquito millage, would we want to take a look at that this Thursday? Could we put that on the agenda for Thursday? The mosquito millage?
That is my preference in order to get it to the county, just in case.
Well, there's a deadline on that.
Yep. Mr. Laddie?
I think the deadline is, it's May 14th, it's right after our May meetings, and I agree with Ms. Lane, the sooner we get it to the county, the better off we'll be. So if you are willing to take it up Thursday, that would be good. If you want it to be put off until the 27th, that would be possible, although I think you'll have a quorum, but not much more than that. The last choice would be our Thursday meeting in May, but that's very close to the deadline for the county.
Right, that's pretty close.
Take it up at next.
We might get a snowstorm or something and the
Could be.
meeting gets canceled.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
let's take it up at the next meeting.
okay. Mr. Gray?
Take what up?
This,
We must
on
be-
Thursday.
Oh, Thursday?
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Gray.
Yeah, the question I had is, in here it's listing 10 years, and I can't remember, I don't think it was 10 years before. How long was it before, Mr. Laddie?
For some reason, 4 years is sticking in my head, but Ms. I'll defer to Ms.
So
Lane.
why are we going to 10? I mean,
I think it was just
Mike-
a suggestion by a board member.
oh, okay, my only concern is, I don't know what's gonna happen in 10 years, and I know we've got nowhere near the max, and we've been fortunate. In other words, we can bill more than what this existing millage has been at, okay? But if something changes, 10 years is a long time, and I'm just kinda cautious that if we went out 10 years and somehow, you know, we can't go there, then we'd have to stop the mosquitoes, so I'd rather stay with the 4.
And they
The 4's
could be
work.
extinct by then also.
Then we wouldn't need it at all, right?
They could.
Well, and then the other thing is you've got the Headley rollback too that we're contending with, right?
That's right, yeah, the Headley rollback will affect it too, and then that'll eat into the amount that you can, cause it'll roll back, but then, can we even, that's a question for you, Mr. Laddie, with the Headley rollback, it comes back, however, if we're way below the max, we can bump it up, because we don't have to go back to the people, if they approve a certain amount.
You're right. What will happen is if we have an amount that's not to exceed, and we have 0.2377 mils, that amount will be subject to the rollback. But as you point out, I don't think we've gotten anywhere close to that. And what we try to do is just take the bare amount that our services are from Rose and collect that amount. And it's always been under that amount. So I don't think the Headley is so much of an issue necessarily for us on this, but in terms of the time frame, and you jogged my memory on another discussion that we had with another municipality, there is, I hope that mosquitoes are gone in some amount of time, but there's also could be changing ideas or needs from residents. And while we've been very successful with this millage, and it's been supported greatly throughout the years, I suppose if you argued that the more often that you have the millage question in front of the people, the better barometer it is for their feelings regarding the millage. So if you're at all swayed by that idea, that's something to consider. On the other hand, we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we're having a special election because our millage has to be renewed for the mosquitoes. So I don't know what the magic number is, but
Well, we can decide on Thursday whether we want 4 or
Yes.
10 years, but one thing that if we stuck with the 10 years, there is a correction that we'd need to make, and that's, it would be.
2027.
Right, so 10 years beginning 2018 through 2027. Okay. With that, Mr. Laddie, did we have, I'm sorry, did you?
Could I have a minute on the written reports?
The board reports, or?
The item 6 here is the written reports, Director of Assessing.
Yeah, Thursday we generally go through those, but if there's something
I
you
didn't-
wanted to.
Oh, they're on there, I'm sorry, yes, fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
No, Scott, it's on the committee of the whole agenda, so typically the written reports
Oh,
are
okay.
there for the
I
committee
thought
of
you
the
meant our
whole.
board reports.
No, just,
Okay, I'm
no,
sorry.
these.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so, let me just fire off a couple of things here. On the Director of Assessing report, there's 3 role certifications. Do you recall that? I'm just kind of wondering what those certifications are.
Tax roll certification.
Tax roll certification, yeah, exactly right. Why are there 3 of them?
The reason behind this is when you go through the March Board of Review, that's where people have the opportunity to come in, make their appeals, and then the Board of Review certifies the tax rolls at the end of that time based on any changes or clerical corrections that they've made. So when you get it back, you're looking at different certifications, and I know it's seems strange because it's all the same form, the 47s, but it's just the fact that it's has to do with some of it has to do with what's held back from land bank 50/50. So there's a different one for that shows, hey, here's the values that were within the land bank, and this is the amount that's being held back because of the land bank not being collected.
Okay.
So you're seeing one that shows like, hey, this is the real property that is been certified by the Board of Review. The next one says, this is the property that's under an IFT, so that we have to report back that we're not sending out that full amount, that 50% of that's been allocated to an IFT. So then you look at that one, and the next one you see is that land bank where, again, those, they're not collecting the full amount of tax on the land bank. Those have been waived by the properties that are owned by the land bank.
They look
So
all
it's-
similar, so.
It's all of our assessment roll, but you're just seeing 3 different 4037s because we have to be able to account for the taxes that we're not collecting, as well as what the certified roll is for what we are collecting.
Okay. Can I keep going? Down to the fire department one. I didn't see, maybe I missed it, but I didn't see the fire that appeared in the city apartments in this report. Is that because it wasn't in the township, or is it?
No, it's noted as a major incident
Okay.
in the written paragraphs.
It didn't seem as though there was much damage. I mean, we have that metric, right, where saved versus loss, and it didn't really seem like, was it contained? Was it?
Only structure fire last year, very little damage to the building.
Okay. Next one down to the police, and maybe we can't discuss some of this here, but there was a hit-and-run victim that was noted on there. Is there any update to that situation?
An update on it, I do not know it.
Okay. And the other thing is in the school incident reports, there seemed to be like multiple knife incidents, especially at West Middle School. Is this like it's happened to notice at this time? Is it abnormal? Or is there some policy that we ought to be, it's a school, it's their realm, but it just seems like if we got our police in there, I guess I'm just wondering if there's something that we ought to be doing along that lines, or recommending, suggesting, whatever.
Yeah, there certainly is an uptick, but I think it's an isolated, a lot of those are from student information that's come forward. I think a lot of that is because
Okay.
the students are more very proud of the students and appreciate their input and resulted in some of those.
I mean, it seems like it's like, oh, we found a knife incident and school handles it. I mean, it's just kind of like, I guess that's just how they handle it.
Oftentimes they do,
Okay,
depending on the situation.
okay.
If they involve us, appropriate enforcement.
All right, so you know about it, but the school handles the situation.
Circumstance.
Okay, okay.
I can envision some pretty innocuous
Right.
situations where somebody has a kitchen butter knife in
Yeah.
their lunch thing, and the school deals with it, which is, I think,
That's,
admirable that
Yeah.
we deal with
Each
it that way.
situation has its own.
Right.
Right, Mr. Guzak?
And of course, you always override anything that you think needs to be addressed. You always address it with them and take care of it, right?
Yes, and I can tell you, any criminal activity that's been, assaultive activity or anything like that, always included us in that.
Right.
In the schools since 2014, with the Snyder administrative, it's zero tolerance. Zero tolerance. And so even if it is a butter knife, they're suspended.
Well, and I think, one of the things with the school issues that we saw over the past month or so is that our Grand Blanc schools are at the top of the list in terms of, what we've been doing for years, so, with the ALICE training, what have you, so.
thank you.
Okay, Mr. Laddie?
Could we have an executive session to discuss a written attorney opinion?
So
I make-
moved, Mr. Chairman.
Support.
Mr. Kent?
Aye.
Mr. Mansell?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we used to.
All right, we'll begin our executive session in about 5 minutes.